My girlfriend extended her trip without me and expected me to pay for her plane ticket home. When I refused, she called me jealous. Hey folks, welcome to Story Nest. Don't forget to hit subscribe. It's a big help and keeps you in the loop with all our stories. I always thought I was a planner. Everything was meticulously organized. Take our vacation to Italy, for example. Claire, my girlfriend of 2 years, and I'd been talking about it for months. It was supposed to be the perfect trip. 2 weeks in a beautiful country, spending quality time together, soaking in the culture and just having fun. I wanted to give her the best experience possible. I make more money than she does, so I took care of the flights, hotels, and everything else. I thought it was a nice gesture, a way to make sure we didn't have to worry about anything while we were away. I mean, I'd hoped it would be stress-free for both of us. For the first 10 days, it really was perfect. We toured Rome, ate too much pasta, wandered the streets of Florence, and took in the Tuscan countryside. Every day felt like a new adventure. I thought we were in sync, enjoying each other's company more than ever. But then came the last day. The day I'll never forget. We were sitting in a cafe in Milan, sipping our espresso and talking about how nice it had been to just get away. I was already feeling the weight of the trip winding down, but I never expected what happened next. I think I need to stay longer, Claire said, breaking the silence. I froze. What do you mean? Stay longer. I couldn't hide the confusion in my voice. She hesitated before continuing, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I think I need time to think about things about me, about us. I want to stay here a bit longer on my own. My heart sank. I didn't know what to say. I was taken aback, blindsided even. The last day of our trip and now she was telling me she wanted to be alone? Without warning? I'd planned this whole vacation with her, spent all this money, and now she was telling me she needed space? I tried to keep calm, but inside I felt a wave of frustration. Okay, but if you want to stay, you're on your own with the costs. I'm not paying for an extended stay, I said, my voice shaking a little from the shock. Her face fell, and I could tell she wasn't expecting that. She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off before she could. If you want time to figure things out, then fine. But I'm not covering your plane ticket or anything else. That's not fair to me. She stared at me for a moment, as if trying to process my words. Then she blinked, her expression changing from confusion to something I couldn't quite read. I can't believe you'd be so unsupportive, she said, her voice low. The words stung. I had always been supportive of her, always tried to make things work. But this felt like a betrayal. How could she throw that in my face? I could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, like it was suffocating me. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that Claire wanted to stay alone or how blindsided I felt by the whole thing. We had never talked about this. Not once had she mentioned needing space or that she was feeling uncertain. It was as if the entire idea had come out of nowhere. I'd been planning this trip for months, and she was just opting out of it at the last second. It didn't make sense. I'm not trying to be unsupportive, Claire, I said, my voice tight, trying to calm myself down. But this is something you should have discussed with me before we even left. It's not like you just decided this 5 minutes ago. She looked away, her eyes darkening. It's not that simple. I just need some time to think. About everything. She said the last part quietly, almost as an afterthought. The way she said it felt like a punch to my gut. About everything? What did that even mean? Was it about us? Was she questioning the relationship? It felt like she was dropping a bomb without any regard for the mess it would leave in its wake. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. Okay, but you can't expect me to pay for your trip when you've suddenly made this decision. I've already covered everything for us this whole time. She gave me a sharp look. You're being selfish, she snapped, her voice rising. You know I don't have the money to stay longer, and now you're leaving me stranded here? I'm not leaving you stranded, I shot back, feeling a flare of anger. You're choosing to stay. You can figure it out. I wanted to say more, but I knew the conversation was going in circles, and neither of us was going to back down. This wasn't about a plane ticket anymore. It was about something deeper, something that had been building up under the surface. The more I thought about it, the more I realized Claire hadn't been clear with me at all about what she wanted. She hadn't communicated anything until the last possible moment, and now I was supposed to play the role of the understanding partner who foots the bill for her indecision. I felt the frustration bubble up in me again, but I kept my composure. "You've made your choice, Claire. I'm not going to let you pull me into your mess." She was quiet for a long moment. Her face softened, but it didn't make me feel better. "I don't understand why you can't just help me out this one time," she said, her voice almost pleading. "It's not like I planned this." I shook my head, trying to stay calm despite the anger and hurt that were twisting inside of me. "It's not about one time. It's about trust. And boundaries. You can't just expect me to cover everything when you make last-minute decisions like this." She didn't respond. Instead, she pulled her phone out of her bag and started scrolling through it, likely looking for flights home. The silence between us was so thick I could almost taste it. There was no resolution, no compromise, just this deep, growing chasm between us that I couldn't ignore. I was done arguing. At that point, I was just exhausted, physically and emotionally. All I wanted was to get through the day, to get back to the airport and get home. I had no idea what we were going to do after this trip, but I knew one thing for sure. Things weren't the same anymore. By the time we made it to the airport, I felt numb. The excitement I had felt at the start of the trip, looking forward to our time together in Italy, was gone. Replaced with a quiet, bitter realization that Claire and I were on two different paths now, and no amount of explaining or trying to convince each other would change that. We didn't talk much on the drive to the airport. The tension between us was suffocating, and every word felt like a potential landmine. Claire seemed to be absorbed in her thoughts, her eyes glued to her phone screen. I was too, scrolling mindlessly, trying to keep my mind occupied. But all I could think about was how everything had crumbled. I kept replaying the conversation, the way she had dropped the "I need to think" bomb on me, and how it felt like I was being punished for something I didn't even understand. When we got to the airport, I was eager to just get it over with. I was the kind of person who gets to the airport early, even when I know I have hours before my flight. I couldn't explain it, but something in me always needed that buffer, that extra time to make sure everything went smoothly. Maybe it was a bit of anxiety, but today, I just wanted to be alone with my thoughts. I needed some space to clear my head. So I told Claire I'd go ahead and check in and that I'd meet her at the gate. I figured I'd take the time to sort through my feelings, and maybe, just maybe, the distance would help me make sense of everything that had happened. I didn't expect to see her again until we were boarding. But a little over an hour later, I saw Claire coming toward me at the check-in counter, her suitcase rolling behind her. She looked different. Almost lost. It didn't hit me at first, but as she got closer, I could see that her confidence, the same confidence she had exuded earlier when she demanded to stay longer and figure things out, was completely gone. She looked like she had just realized the magnitude of the situation, the consequences of what she had done. Her eyes flicked to mine, and for a split second, she hesitated, like she didn't know what to say. Then, she broke the silence. "You weren't serious, were you? About the ticket?" I couldn't hold back the sharpness in my voice. "I told you I wasn't paying for your extended stay. You made the choice to stay longer, Claire. This is your responsibility, not mine." She looked stunned, almost as if I had slapped her. "You're just going to leave me here? Alone?" "I didn't leave you here. You chose this, remember?" I said, the bitterness bubbling up inside me. "You wanted to stay and figure things out on your own, so now you're on your own." I watched her face change from disbelief to something I didn't quite recognize. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. And then, in the next breath, she seemed to collapse, her shoulders drooping as if she had finally realized what had just happened. She wasn't just dealing with me not paying for her ticket, she was dealing with the consequences of her own actions, the fact that she had blindsided me, and the harsh reality that I wasn't there to rescue her. As the minutes dragged on, I could see the panic starting to set in. She hadn't thought ahead about where she would stay. She was so focused on staying longer to figure things out that she hadn't even thought about the practicalities. What did she think was going to happen? Was I supposed to just keep bailing her out when she made decisions like this? I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. It wasn't that I wanted her to be miserable. It was that, for once, I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. For once, I wasn't going to be the one to clean up the mess. The hotel had kicked her out earlier because I'd only paid for the room until that day. Now, she was stranded with no place to go and no money to cover another night. I had warned her. I had tried to be reasonable, but this was her mess to handle. I wanted to feel sorry for her, I really did. But the truth was, I was angry that she'd put me in this position. Angry that she had blindsided me with this decision, not giving me the chance to process or talk through it with her. Angry that, instead of discussing our relationship and where it was headed, she had just checked out, emotionally and physically. And now, she was asking me for help, expecting me to be the one to fix it. But I wasn't her savior anymore. It was like something snapped inside me. I had been holding it together for so long, trying to keep my emotions in check, trying to be the understanding boyfriend who always supported Claire. But at that moment, I realized I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when she was pulling away, when she wasn't even giving me the courtesy of a real conversation. We stood there in the airport for what felt like an eternity, the tension between us so thick I could almost feel it pressing against my chest. Claire was silent now, her eyes darting between me and the floor, clearly unsure of how to handle the situation she had gotten herself into. She had no backup plan, no idea of how to fix this. She was used to me taking care of things for her, but this time, I wasn't going to. So what now? I finally asked, my voice colder than I intended. Are you going to beg me to pay for your ticket back? Is that what this is? Claire shook her head quickly, her lips pressed into a thin line. She was trying to keep it together, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She wasn't as confident as she'd been earlier, and I couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of relief and anger. It was like she had finally been forced to confront the consequences of her actions, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook. I'm not begging you for anything, she said, her voice stiff. But I don't get why you're being so cold about this. We've been together for 2 years. 2 years, and this is how it ends. I didn't have an answer. In that moment, I realized that I had already checked out emotionally. I had been trying to make excuses for her behavior, trying to justify the things she did, but the truth was, I couldn't anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that we were okay when everything around me was falling apart. No, Claire, I said, the words coming out sharper than I meant. This is how you ended it. Not me. You made a choice to stay here alone, to figure things out without even giving me a heads up. You didn't care enough to talk to me about it, and now you're upset that I'm not fixing it for you. Her eyes widened, and I could see the guilt flash across her face. For a second, it looked like she might break down, but she quickly composed herself, crossing her arms tightly over her chest as if trying to protect herself from the storm of emotions that were clearly bubbling inside her. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said quietly, her voice trembling. I didn't mean to hurt you. You just wanted space, right? I interrupted, my frustration bubbling to the surface. I get it, but don't act like I'm the one who's in the wrong here. You've been emotionally checked out for a while now, and I don't know why it took me this long to realize it. She opened her mouth to respond, but then stopped herself, looking at me as if she was searching for something in my eyes. Maybe she was looking for a sign that I would back down, that I would offer some kind of comforting reassurance. But there was none of that left in me. I had given too much, and now I was done. You know what? I said, turning away from her. I'm done talking about this. We both know what's going on here. I walked away from her, not looking back. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I couldn't pretend to be the person who would fix things for her, the person who would always come to the rescue. It was like I had finally come to terms with the fact that this relationship wasn't going to work anymore. She wasn't the same person I had fallen in love with, and I wasn't the same person who would let her walk all over me. I took a seat at the gate, waiting for the flight, feeling the weight of the situation settle heavily on my shoulders. I wanted to feel angry, to feel something that would fuel the fire of this breakup, but instead, all I could feel was numb. I was emotionally drained, like every last ounce of energy had been spent on trying to make this relationship work. Now, all I wanted was to go home, to put this trip and this relationship behind me. The flight back was one of the most awkward experiences of my life. After everything that had gone down, sitting next to Claire on that plane felt like I was trapped in a bad dream that I couldn't wake up from. We didn't say much. Every time I tried to look at her, I just felt that sinking feeling in my stomach again. All those doubts I'd been pushing aside came rushing to the surface. Doubts about her, about us, about whether this was something I even wanted to fight for anymore. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, with everything we hadn't addressed, but that had been building up. And Claire? She seemed to be going through the same internal battle. I could see it in her face, how she was trying to figure out if there was a way to salvage what we had left, or if it was just too far gone. Honestly, I didn't have the energy to go through it with her anymore. I didn't want to hear her excuses, didn't want to listen to her justifications for why she had acted the way she had. I was done. When we landed, it was like we both exhaled at the same time, but there was no relief in that breath. The reality was there waiting for us. We were back home, back to the life we had before, but I could feel that nothing was going to be the same. The relationship had shifted irreparably, and there was no pretending anymore. As we drove back to our place, Claire started talking again, her voice soft and hesitant. She had to be trying to fix things, to find some way to explain why she had made the choices she had, why she had handled things the way she had. We could still work things out, she said, her eyes darting toward me in the rearview mirror. We can talk through this. I think we should. I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her that it was too late, that we had already crossed a line. But another part of me, one that I had been fighting for a while now, wanted to just hear her out, maybe find some way to salvage what we had. I had to admit, I still cared for her. I still loved her in some way, but that wasn't enough anymore. Love alone didn't fix everything. She went on, her words a desperate attempt to convince me. I know I made a mistake by not telling you sooner, but this whole trip has been so overwhelming. I needed to clear my head. It doesn't mean I don't care about you. But all I could think about was how much easier it had been when I was actually listening to my own needs. When I wasn't so busy trying to solve her problems that I ignored my own. That was the problem with us. We were both so caught up in trying to be the perfect couple, perfect for each other, that we forgot to take care of ourselves. I don't think this is something we can fix anymore, I finally said, my voice steady, though I could feel the ache in my chest as I spoke the words aloud. You've been distant for a while now, Claire. And I've been ignoring it, thinking it would get better. But it hasn't. You've checked out emotionally, and I've been left picking up the pieces. I can't keep doing that. Claire didn't say anything at first. Her silence told me everything I needed to know. She was processing what I had said, trying to decide if she could change my mind. But deep down, I knew she couldn't. I had already made mine up. As we pulled up to our apartment, I could see the tears welling in her eyes, but I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. It wasn't that I didn't care, of course, I did, but I wasn't the one she needed right now. She needed to figure out what she truly wanted, and I couldn't be the one to give her that answer anymore. We sat in the car for a few minutes, neither of us moving. The weight of everything hung between us. I could hear the sound of her shallow breathing, feel the way her body was tense beside me. She had tried to convince me that we could still make it work, but I wasn't convinced. The truth was, I had stopped believing in us a while ago. I'm going to stay with my mom for a bit, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I need some space too, to figure out what I really want. I nodded, not really knowing how to respond. Okay, I think that's a good idea. She hesitated for a moment, as if she was waiting for me to stop her, to tell her that I'd made a mistake, that we could fix this. But I didn't. I couldn't. She gathered her things, and we walked into the apartment together. It felt like the end of something, but neither of us said it aloud. There was no need to. The silence said it all. I grabbed my bags and started heading toward the door. "I'll pack my things and leave," Claire said, her voice sounding small. She was trying to hold it together, but I could see the cracks in her facade. "I'll leave," I said, even though the idea of staying felt like an anchor pulling me down. She didn't argue. We both knew it was time to go our separate ways. That's all for today's story. Hit that subscribe button and leave a like if you want to see more. Your support helps a lot.